Everyone, and welcome to this channel. My name is Frank, Whiskey Charlie Zero Oscar. I appreciate you coming by, especially those that have been stuck around for the last year and a half. This video is to preface the next video, which is about modifying the MX-P50M amplifier for the IC705. Oops, did I touch somebody's nerves there? The amplifier for the IC705. Why would I need an amplifier? Don't you know that's a QRP rig? Yes, I do know. And that's sometimes it can be a little bit of a touchy subject matter when people talk about the IC705 and amplifiers. And a lot of times it's just the person that's asking the questions, like in the forums or on YouTube, it's all about putting things into context. I would say 90% or more of people who buy the IC705 understand what they're getting into, especially if you watch YouTube videos. Sure, a lot of times when people use the IC705, especially if you watch like some of the first videos, they're like, oh my gosh, this is a great radio. I made like contacts, halfway around the world and this and that. And sure, it probably was possible to do that. But one of the things that I think new hams don't realize is that you need a good antenna. You need an antenna that has good gain. You need to understand that something like a vertical antenna probably gives you better propagation for DXing than maybe like an end-fed half-wave antenna. And even in the the end-fed half-wave antenna, depending on the orientation and the way it's put together, how it's set up, how it's deployed. So there are many factors. And one of the things about my experience has been is that I've gone through several radios before I really honed in on the IC705. I knew what I was getting into. And for since the radio came out, I've been having such a challenge in getting one or two contacts with 5 watts, and sometimes with 10 when you put the battery, the external battery on it. I even built a kit, solar go box for the IC705 that has, a solar controller, the buddy pole mini, and then the buddy pole solar controller, and then a nice bioenno battery. The 3 amp fits perfectly in a marine box. It's one of those yellow boxes that you can put items in so that it can be protected from the water. But before I purchased the IC705, I had some experiences with other radios. For example, the what is that one? The FT457, right? I think that's what it was. FT 457D, right? Yes, that's the Yaesu one. That was a beautiful radio because it gave you VHF, UHF. It was very compact, HF as well. But because I was a new ham, it was really hard to hear those faint signals. Not only that, it was very hard for me to understand, upper sideband, lower sideband when I started. And, sometimes I would get very frustrated trying to like move the knob. Is it here in the right or in the left? And by the time, as I practiced more and more, it became a little easier, but still there was a frustration of trying to figure out how to utilize the radio. Now, I know, people who have been in the ham hobby is like, well, practice, learn it, do it, Stop complaining and whining about it. And that's true. But wouldn't it be great if there's an interface that makes the process more easier, right? For example, the next radio I had was the FT891, which was, it sounded a little bit better because the filters were built in. And it just felt a little bit easier to figure out where the signals were. With the 100 watts, a much more, build factor that was nice, but no VHF, no UHF, and other features like a waterfall. Again, if you look at some of the videos that were like maybe 5-10 years ago, oh, you don't need a waterfall. Waterfalls, no, that's just a waste of time. It's silly to have one. You don't need one. And again, that's true. You don't need a waterfall to tell you where the signal is. You just look up on a website, or you just go up and down the dial and find it. But again, having an interface that's easy to read makes the experience go faster, so that you can ultimately do what ham radio is about, right? Communicating with people. And then, I purchased also an IC7300. Before that, it was the FT991A. That radio, you have, it's beautiful. It has a waterfall. It's not a SDR, but it has all the features like one. And it has, it's a shack in a box. It has UHF, VHF, HF. And it's compact. But I felt, again, that I couldn't seem to get those very faint, signals. And the interface is a little bit challenging. I mean, when I first got it, the first thing I did was touch the frequency, where the frequency is. And I was touching. I was like, isn't this a touch screen? And it doesn't seem to, I can't seem to like change the frequency. Well, you don't do it that way. It's not that intuitive. You have to, do other steps, which is, again, fine, right? It's not about, it's like, learn the technology, stop whining about it, and do the contact, right? You'll figure it out as you go. And that seems to be part of the issue, I think, when we get into this whole space of amplifiers in a minute. And then the IC7300, big difference. Personally, between the FT991A and the IC7300, 7300 has a better interface. You can hear people with a fainter signal. It's the graphic user interface is the key to that radio. A lot of people are like, no, FT991A is better. And they have their points. I mean, it has VHF, UHF, which is very important. And system fusion or something, right? The digital piece. And it has its place. It's smaller, right? But there's something about the graphic user interface. You touch where the frequency is, boom, you can change the frequency. There is no other button to think about, right? It's kind of like using a phone. When you use one phone, regardless of the brand, right, you can use a very similar phone with the same operating system. And so now we get to the IC705, right? And that's what my lineage is in terms of understanding, going into these vintage radios and going into 991A, and then finally hitting a radio, the IC7300, that I liked, right? And when you have the radio that you love, you have it on your desk, you have, an antenna, and things are working okay. You want to take that radio into the field and you try. You put it in the box. You put a 144 watt battery, a 12 amp hour battery from Bioenno or something. You try really hard to put all that together, and it's really heavy. As a matter of fact, I was like looking at the weight. Did you know that the IC7300 weighs more than a gallon of milk? Gallon of milk is like 4.1 kilograms. The IC 7300 weighs 4.2 kilograms, 9.21 pounds. That's kind of like a small baby. That's like a bowling ball. That's insane. And then you have the case, and then you have the battery, right? And the other accessories, and that weighs that's a lot. That's a lot of weight. 9 pounds. Let's say 9 pounds. So taking that and taking it outside so that you can communicate with somebody is a little bit tough. Now, people might say, well, I take it out. That's true. When you go to your hams at the park or something, or your club, like, hey, let's get together somewhere and take our radios, and it's cool. Your your IC7300, you take it out. It's wonderful. 100 watts, very, very portable, because you take it once or twice a month, or maybe once a year, maybe like for field day or winter field day. It's cool. There's no issue with it. But if you want to take it out into the field every other day, every weekend, it's tough to carry that. Put that bowling ball in your backpack, and it becomes a challenge. And you can see a lot of people, they build these wonderful cases, these go boxes for the 7300. They have the 7300, they have a tuner, they have an amplifier, and they have maybe just a VHF, UHF radio, right? A power supply, and it's such a beautiful setup that you wonder, did you need like two people to carry that? And it's beautiful. It's all compact. You put it in the box. You take it to the car. If you leave it in the car, it's really nice. And if you take it for a day or two, I think it's manageable, very manageable. But again, if you want to take it out, right, into the field every Friday, every Saturday, or every other week, it's a challenge. It is really a challenge. Again, it goes back to the mentality, a mindset, right? Just do it. Why are you whining? Why are you complaining? You can carry that, and that's true. But making things more accessible, so that you can have more fun in terms of like having something more portable and being more nimble, is also cool too. So when the IC 705 came out, I was like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. But then when I read the reviews, oh, this is a QRP radio. Or what is that? Low power, 5 watts, with the battery, 10 watts. And the KX2, which I had previously, I was like, I don't know if I want QRP anymore, because with that radio, I was into digital, and it would overheat, and I was still having problems listening to people, and that didn't have a waterfall as well. So when I saw that it only weighed 2.2 pounds, right? 2.2 pounds. That's not a lot. That's not a lot of weight. And so you start to think, can I use a QRP radio in the field more often? But then you get into this whole thing about it's not enough power. And so this is where people like me start to wonder, why is it that I'm not able to communicate with people? I only get one contact in the last 3 or 4 hours, which is part of what QRP is all about. But I think what's going on is, and as you do this more and more, you gain this experience. If your antenna is not that great, if your antenna is not giving you an additional gain, that QRP is going to be really hard to contact people. You might have some losses in your cable, so you have to be aware of that. The ground on the ground that you're in might not give you the return loss or the gain that you need for your antenna. A lot of it has to do with the antenna, because the radio is only going to give you 5 to 10 watts, right? So the idea is, in terms of the rig, you need a good antenna to give you some additional gain when you transmit, but you also need sometimes a little push. So doing some calculations, if you double your power, you get 3 dB increase, and if you quadruple the power, you get 6 dBs, which will give you 1 S unit. And if you're starting from 5 watts and you quadruple it, that gives you 20 watts. That's going to give you 1 S unit more of gain, or I guess it's gain, right? I don't know, one S unit, which means that it might be able to, when you speak, giving you 20 watts might give you the edge, the nudge to go above the noise level. You don't know how many times I've had to speak to somebody and they're like, I think you're there, but I can't really hear you because the noise level is really, you're at the noise level. And that would frustrate me all the time. Again, yes, you're in QRP. What do you expect? That's true. But, I didn't have the expertise to make a better antenna because I didn't understand so much. I'm still new. I know now that, the antenna is important. But I also know that if the conditions are poor, you can have a good antenna. You have good conductivity on the ground. But if you have very poor propagation, let's say, a boost of your amplifier is going to help you, right? So an amplifier really, for certain situations, right, for the IC705, is so that the receiving station can have a better time hearing you, to give you that additional 20 watts. Yeah, maybe you can even go up to 40 watts with this particular amp. Not really. I think there have been some experimentation on that. It's close to it. But let's say you can get to 30 watts or something. That's wonderful, right? Because it gives you the ability to go above the noise level. Or let's say you're at home, right? And there's a lot of QRM, right? There's a lot of noise in the area, man-made noise, people noise, right? And with TVs and cell phones, I don't know, computers, having an amplifier might be able to give you that edge that you need to pump out a little more when those days you feel like, oh my gosh, nobody's listening to me. It's not that, it's just that they can't hear you. You're just at that level where the noise is. And so this conversation that I'm having with you is more through my experience. I hope this gives an insight for those that are wanting to get an IC705 or want to get into QRP, and what are some of the traps. I mean, I can be here another hour talking about some of the experiences I've had in terms of of QRP with the QRP rig. It's definitely a challenge. You know, you start to figure out some patterns. You start to figure out what antenna is it that you like to use. You start to recognize different locations are better suited for certain things. But then again, the challenge is to set up, to deploy anywhere, right, for communications. And regardless of the situation, being at home or being at the park, you know, or just being in the middle of nowhere, are you able to set up something, an antenna, and be able to utilize your radio? And having the amplifier gives you the option of having a little bit more, just a little bit more of sameness, so that somebody can come back to you and say, hey, you know, I have your signal report, you know, I'm talking to you, you know, from a long distance, which is cool. It's exciting. Okay, so now that you are now that you have listened to my conversation here about why would you want an amplifier for the IC705, I hope you watch the next video and see how I put together or modified that particular amplifier. Okay, I hope to hear from you soon. If you like the content, give it a thumbs up. If you would like, please subscribe. Please support the channel, and I hope to see you out there. This is Frank, Whiskey Charlie, 0 Oscar. Bye-bye.